All right, welcome back to the Talk to Me PDD podcast. I'm your host, PDD, coming here to talk to you about leadership, management, and today a bit about productivity. So this is episode number 11. I'm going to talk about productivity and undesirable tasks. So I did a presentation a little bit ago about the fundamentals of productivity and always like to have a Q&A section. One of the questions sort of stood out to me about that, so I wanted to come back to it and expand upon that a little bit more. But first, just want to raise awareness around the concept of productivity and planning and how important that is um, for knowledge workers today. And I think it's something that's underutilized in general. So trying to evangelize it, it's been something that's been really helpful for me personally. And I would say just be aware that the intent is not just to grind it out and do more and more work. It's to be able to do your work and live your life with less stress and focus on getting the important things done. So one of the tenets that Cal Newport talks about, he's a big proponent of productivity and planning, is this concept of how these systems will allow us to do remarkable work, and remarkable work being things that we want to talk about, that we're proud of, that we find interesting, that we think others might find interesting. So for me, that was the book here that I wrote, People Management from the Ground Up. I would not have been able to write this book without a lot of the techniques from productivity and planning. I didn't do long writing sessions. I would block out some time in the morning, most days, not every day, and then just try and write a small amount. So a lot of the techniques from productivity and planning in general, and then some specifically for writing that were helpful for me. Um, all this while managing a family, life, career, and many other things going on. So um, really helpful for me. Recommend it just in general. So a couple of the things at a high level that I touched on at the fundamentals of planning and productivity are thinking about lifestyle centric planning. So, not just planning for your career in isolation, but how does your work fit into your overall vision of what a, a good life is for you? So, I think that's at the start. We obviously want some separation between work and life and boundaries and things like that there, but ultimately we're one person living one life. So I think that's helpful. It's been helpful for me to think about the integration of the two and having a overall lifestyle with my work as part of it that works for me and my vision of what I want. Um, and then we have to prioritize, and we can't prioritize everything. So having a way that we limit the overall number of things that we're trying to accomplish at a given time, the important things, and that's going to make it easier for us to focus and make progress on those things. Um, then getting into some of the tactical details, having a capture system, a way to keep track of things we have to do, activities, follow ups, and we're taking them out of our working memory, which is really going to help free up some space there, make us feel less stressed, and then just have a system where we can capture what we need to do so we make sure we don't lose track of it. And then the last piece I would call, or is called, multi-scale time planning. So just figuring out how we're going to do those tasks and the other things that we want to do to make progress towards our big priorities at different levels. So, starting with a longer term plan, like what do we want to accomplish in a given year, and then breaking that down into months and weeks and days. Um, that can be a lot if you're not already doing some sort of planning or have a system in place. I think at a fundamentals level, you want to plan at roughly a year level. So you have some longer term goal you're working towards, and then plan your days so that you're organized in your individual days. And those are the two sort of fundamental areas that I focused on. I think they're all valuable, but if you're starting off from nothing, start with those areas. Have a way to keep track and um, store the things that you need to do, and then have a system on what you're going to do in a given day and how that's building towards a longer term goal. So during that presentation, about half the time had for Q&A, which is always fun, trying to think on my feet, and great to hear what people are thinking. So one of the questions that think took me aback a little bit. I wasn't necessarily prepared for it. But I think it's a good question, and I've reflected a little bit more on it and wanted to discuss it. Is what do you do about tasks or work that you don't enjoy doing? And I think that was one of the reasons maybe it took me back is I don't really have a lot of things like that in my life. And I'll get back to that later. It may not be necessarily what you think about that. So I wasn't really sort of thinking along those lines. But, one, there's always things that we have to do as part of life that we don't necessarily enjoy doing. And that was sort of one of my responses there. And really, a planning and productivity system is about getting things done. So if you need to get done things that you don't necessarily enjoy doing, but they're part of a longer term goal or they're just something that you need to do, a productivity and planning system will help you get them done, but it's not necessarily going to guarantee that you enjoy doing them. There was also some discussion among the group about this concept of task stacking, which I'm not super familiar with, but basically the idea of doing something you enjoy at the same time as doing something you don't enjoy. So listening to music while you wash dishes if you enjoy music and don't enjoy washing dishes. So I think that's interesting. That's not necessarily something that I particularly do myself, but I can see it helpful, being helpful. So then I was reflecting, all right, why is it that I don't really have a lot of things that I don't enjoy doing? Not that I have a life that's any different than anybody else's, but I wanted to share a couple thoughts on that. One, I think that this can really help with prioritization. So it's hard to say no to things. If there's something that you don't enjoy doing, that should be a good trigger or indication that this might be something to say no to or to try and avoid. And that can help you with prioritization. We often have so many things, it's hard to say no. I struggle saying no to things and prioritizing. So if it's something that you don't like doing, that should be a little bit more of an incentive to do that. So I think that's one thing, just being easier to say no to the things that you don't like doing. Um, One of the things that I didn't talk about in this particular talk, but a lot of people in the sort of productivity and planning space talk about the importance of having, a foundation of discipline, having something that you do routinely that's hard, which could be a physical thing, could be, reading practice, writing practice, something that, um, you need to do consistently and isn't quote unquote easy. And I think once you establish that in one or more areas of your life, you're just able to tolerate discomfort better, and things that might bother you otherwise don't bother you as much. So I've tried to cultivate practices of discipline in various areas of my life. So I think that's been helpful where if something's hard or challenging, I don't really feel the same level of discomfort doing it that I might have otherwise without those practices. Um, and then I think having that big picture goal in mind when you have done this sort of high level prioritization, you have yearly plans, you're working towards an ideal lifestyle, lifestyle. Then if a task is building towards that goal, it's going to feel different than if it's just not advancing towards that goal. So just the feeling of making progress towards something that's important to you can make the task itself more enjoyable, even if it's maybe something that you feel like you kind of have to do and wouldn't choose to do otherwise. And then lastly, I think a lot of it is really just your mindset and how you approach it. So whether you like doing something or not is somewhat subjective, at least for a lot of things in knowledge work. One of the things that stuck with me from a family trip that I did this summer with another family is this: they had this saying of gratitude attitude, and I think that's really can be helpful here, right? There's a lot of things that we can focus on being grateful for, even when we have to do hard things. So feeling fortunate to have an opportunity there can shape the way that we perceive it. There was a time where I was doing a lot of running and training, and one of the things I would do was run stairs, like stadium stairs, which is hard. But in my head, I was just, how fortunate am I to be capable to be able to doing this sort of thing, and that really made it an enjoyable experience for me. So I think, even if there's maybe not fun things we have to do for our work or our life sometimes, you know, thinking about all the things that we have to be fortunate for in our life, to be able to be in a position where we get to do those things and we have lots of other benefits. I think regardless of where we are, we can find things to be grateful for and take a positive mindset to the work. And I've found that that helps shape the experience into a more positive thing, even if it's, something objectively that I wouldn't necessarily love to do. So yeah, a little bit of thoughts about productivity, and then kind of specifically, dealing with things you have to do that might not be the most fun. So hope you enjoyed. Yeah, talk to you soon.